she would like. We appreciate your being with us. Justice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, what a wonderful opportunity to be here today. And as Nate said in the last presentation, he reminded me and all of us, but he was reminding me that this is a non-partisan group, and I say great because the judiciary is a non-partisan judiciary. Let me tell you why I'm running. I'm running because I care deeply about our system of justice and its future. And you can believe it wasn't an easy decision for me to decide to run for re-election. I've served on the Wisconsin Supreme Court for the last 20 years. Before that, I was a circuit court judge in Marathon County for 10 years. But I decided this, that it's time to stand up for some principles I believe in. And I have for the last 20 years, but I see our judicial system has real areas of concern. And one is, in my mind, the influx of political parties in non-partisan races. Now, you may disagree with me. I'm telling you who I am and what I believe in. But I believe strongly that we've got to keep political parties out of the non-partisan races. I need and want the votes of Democrats and Republicans and independents. So it is for the goal, for the vision that I have of stopping this trend of inserting political parties' agendas, whatever the party is, political party agendas in a nonpartisan judiciary. I say stop to that. The second reason I decided to run is I say stop to this out-of-state special interest money that's coming in and having an outsized influence on Wisconsin judicial races, right? These groups with unknown agendas, unknown donors, and seemingly unlimited money. Now, what's wrong with that? I'll tell you what's wrong. We, as the third branch of government, the judicial branch of government, we depend on the public trust and confidence of the people. That's what gives us our legitimacy. Unlike the legislative branch, which has the power of the purse, unlike the executive branch under our Constitution, it has the power of the militia. We have only the public and trust and confidence of the people that gives us our legitimacy. And people don't want courts with agendas. It's that simple. Political parties and these out-of-state special interest groups have agendas. It's just that simple. And I thought it's time to make sure that this conversation is had around the state of Wisconsin, that it's time to stop the influx of political parties in judicial races, and it's time to people to stand up and say no to this out-of-state special interest money. We have a problem here in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is number 2 in the nation for having special interest groups purchase television ads in judicial races. Now, I like Wisconsin to be at the top of a lot of lists, but that's not the list that we want to be the top of. So that's why, what is embarrassment? That's right. So that's why I decided to run. I said, this conversation has to take place. Woo! Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Because the person you see here today, Ann Walsh Bradley, Justice on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, the values I have today are the same values I learned growing up in southwest Wisconsin and my hometown, Richland Center. Those are values of family, of fairness, of hard work, and service to others. Those are the values I took with me when I went to La Crosse as a high school teacher. Those are the values I took with me when I went to Wausau to practice law after I finished law school at the University of Wisconsin. I served as a Marathon County judge for 10 years. My husband Mark and I still live in Wausau. We raised our 4 children there, and those are the same values that we tried to impart to them. That is family, fairness, hard work, and service to others. I've had the honor of being on the Wisconsin Supreme Court for the last 20 years. I know that the people of this state want a justice who's fair and impartial and willing to make the tough decisions. For the last 20 years, I have a proven record of applying the law to uphold individual rights, to make sure government is open and accessible, and holding government accountable. I have worked day after day not only to make sure we have a fair and impartial court, but one that is nonpartisan and one that is not beholden to any special interest group. When people come to court, or their neighbors come to court, or their relatives come to court, they want to make sure that there's a level playing field. They want to make sure they get a fair shake no matter how rich or poor, no matter how powerful or powerless. But that level playing field is not something we can take for granted. We've got to be ever vigilant. And I'm running in this race, and when I decided to run, little did I realize what the stark difference would be between my opponent and myself.
Saw it last night.
Okay. I say no to the political parties being infused into non-partisan judiciary. You know, what we do in Wisconsin, what has been our tradition, is to have strong bipartisan support. I have the support of bipartisan leaders around the state of Wisconsin, and those include people like former First Lady, Republican Sue Ann Thompson, Ron Kine, Democrat from the western part of the state, Congressman, State Senator Dale Schultz, Republican, Richland Center, and Tim Cullen, State Senator from my opponent's home county, Rock County. The 4 of them got together and sent a letter to the editor of every newspaper in this state. And the letter started this way: in this time of partisan divide, we come together because we urge the re-election of Justice Ann Walsh Bradley, because we too, they said, believe in the importance of a non-partisan judiciary. I was just so happy. I have strong bipartisan support from over 130 sheriffs and chiefs of police and district attorneys from around the state, and over 170 judges from all levels of the court system are supporting my re-election. Those are the people that know my record best. Those are the people who know my commitment to the court system. Those are the people who know what I stand for. My opponent, you may know, is the Republican Party is helping to fund his campaign. Now again, I need the votes of Republicans and Democrats and independents, but you gotta keep these political parties with their agendas out of our judicial races. He's campaigning from one Republican Party event to the next. Last week, I was in Milwaukee. We had a debate, and I looked at his schedule. He started that week as the featured guest speaker of the Republican Party annual Lincoln Day dinner in Brown County. Then he moved to the featured speaker of the Lincoln Day dinner in Outagamie County, in Winnebago County, and meet and greets in Manitowoc County with the local GOPs. 2 weeks ago, he started a television ad. taking me to task for not being supportive of the political party agenda coming out of Madison. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. You know, that's not the role of any Supreme Court justice, to be for or against any political party's agenda. I don't care what the party is, right? But he's taken me to task to not being supportive. Now that misrepresents what justices do. We're not like the legislature. We're supposed to be different. And you better hope that we remain different. Otherwise, it undermines our very system of democracy in this state. I'm going to touch upon something else that's going to be on the April 7th ballot, and that is the constitutional amendment to change the way that we select our Chief Justice in this state. For over 126 years, we have done it by way of seniority. And the constitutional amendment asks if instead that should be placed in the hands of 4 justices, or at least a majority of justices on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Now, I've been, as I said, on the Supreme Court here in Wisconsin for 20 years. I know and have a lot of friends who are justices on Supreme Courts in other states. And I think there are different methods for selecting your Chief Justice, and which method is the best for the state of Wisconsin perhaps can be subject to discussion and might even be debatable. Might even be debatable. But, you know, my former colleague, Janine Geske, used to serve on the Wisconsin Supreme Court with me. She appeared before the Judiciary Committee in January in the legislature when they were deciding whether or not to place this constitutional amendment on the April 7th ballot. And Janine said this: look, it's clear that this is targeted to get rid of Shirley Abrahamson as Chief Justice. Clear, she said. And Janine went on to say, to change the Constitution because you don't like the style of an individual person would be a terrible mistake. Sacred document. It defines who we are as a people and what we believe in as a state. And so what method of selection might be debatable under other circumstances? I'll tell you what's not debatable in my mind. You don't use that sacred document, that Constitution, as a tool for political payback because you don't like a person's decisions. That's the wrong You're going to hear something that you might not hear from other candidates right now out of my mouth. And let me tell you what it is. This is what I believe in. I don't really believe this election is necessarily about re-electing a candidate in Walsh or Bradley. You know, you're not going to hear a lot of candidates say that way. Because this election, you know, candidates like me come and go. They may not be as good as I am. This election really is about you. It's about you and your children and your neighbors and your family and what kind of court system you want for yourselves and for them and for the future of this state. If they can remove Shirley Abrahamson as Chief Justice on April 7th, and defeat me, that will change the course of our system of justice in this state for decades. We have 10-year terms for decades. So if you believe, as I do, that we have to fight to maintain Wisconsin's tradition of a non-partisan judiciary and keep the agendas of political parties out of these nonpartisan races. If you believe, as I do, that the only role of a justice is to be following the agenda of the Constitution and serving the people of Wisconsin and not following the agenda of a political party's agenda coming from Madison, reform agenda or no reform agenda. If you believe as I do, if you share that vision, then I'm going to ask you, as I said, I used to be a former high school teacher, so I'm going to give you all an assignment before we leave. This is a low turnout election. 15 to 20% of the people will turn out, it's estimated. And we need your help. We need you to put signs up. We need you to write letters to the editor. We need you to contact your friends and your neighbors and your relatives and tell them about the importance of this election. Tell them what's at stake for the state of Wisconsin. So I'm going to ask for not only your vote and not only your support, but we need your help as we march together, hopefully, to victory on April 7th on Wisconsin, and go Badgers! Yeah.